This is the second part of me making Bitsy from Legends of Avantris' TTRPG campaign Uprooted. Last time I made the apron, and today I will be making literally everything else. I'm taking the same blue fabric that I used on the apron and making a very simple gathered skirt. I cut the fabric to have 3 panels, so the seam in the very back can have a spot for where my tail will come through. To make sure there's no fraying, I chose the lazy way of serging by running a big zigzag stitch down the sides of all the raw edges. I sewed all the panels together and got started on adding the waistband. Basically, I split the waistband and skirt into 4 equal parts. I then pinned where I had marked on both the skirt and the waistband together, but since the skirt is bigger, I'm gathering the fabric that's in the middle of the pins. Doing it this way just makes it so the fabric is even and there's no spots that have more or less fabric gathered. I then top stitched the waistband, and because I added the extra material on both ends of the waistband, I sewed on Velcro that will Velcro on the top of, around my tail. Now to the accessories. I started very first with my mouse ears. I'm using my own pattern that you can get on my Etsy, but I've also added a bundle for anyone who also wants to cosplay Bitsy that has the ears, the template it made for the buttons on her apron, and the tail. But back to the ears. I cut out the foam and the fur, making sure to cut out the notch that she has on one of her ears. The fur I used is actually so terrible. I got it online and was deceived about the quality, and I've had multiple yards of it for literal years. Taking 18 gauge wire, I cut the length I wrote on my pattern and started curving it around the craft foam, using packing tape to attach it together. Taking my beloved hot glue mat, I started gluing foam onto the fur, making sure to get all the edges. When it's cooled, I trimmed the excess glue and uneven edges off all around the ears. I then took a pet shaver and just cut all of the fur off, leaving a very short pile on the backs, and bent them into shape. You can do this part in multiple ways, but I have learned that I really love using old eyeshadows I don't use on my face anymore, like they are chalk pastels. In the process, it's messy, but afterwards it doesn't transfer at all, and I've done this multiple times without anything budging or staining anything. I took the prongs of the wire at the bottom and used pliers to bend them around the small metal headband. For the little buttons she has on her apron, I took multiple round objects and traced them onto, I believe, 3mm foam, because I couldn't decide what size I liked, and then cut it out with a box cutter. Since these are small and don't bend, I primed them with Mod Podge, but I mixed in yellow paint to prime and paint the base layer at the same time. I then made a guide of the little flower that's on it, tracing it on with a pencil. Taking the same orange I used on the apron, I painted in the flower and then added the white middle. For her bandana, I just cut out a triangle from fabric, sewed around it, turned it inside out, ironed, and what do you think I did next? Yes, I top stitched it. Of course I top stitched it. Being very meticulous with the stripes, I drew them on with an erasable pen, which is also a favorite tool of mine because the ink just goes away with heat. So once I ironed this after doing all of the painting, the marks went away. After figuring out the lines, I taped out the area and airbrushed the orange on. Despite me putting paper on the top part, it still got overspray on them, but you can't even tell when I'm wearing it. Now to the tail. I'm a little monkey-brained, and I didn't film any of this. Took pink stretch taffeta that I got from Wholesale Fabric Direct that I had left over from making this Princess Peach dress, and it has a perfect texture for a mouse tail. And then I used the same shitty fur and just sewed it all together using the pattern I made, and finished the tail off, hand sewing the end that I had cut out from felt, adding a strap to feed a belt through, and there we are, my finished Bitsy that I ended up only spending $6.99 on, and was made almost entirely with things I already had. Okay, thank you, bye!